Ever since the populists entered the political scene, liberals have been losing. And that of course felt frustrating because obviously losing sucks. And so this idea of liberal populism came around, where we are basically like at school looking what the classmate next to us is doing, what the more successful pupil is doing, and copy a little bit from it. So in this short little video, we want to look at whether we can copy the populist. Is it actually possible for liberals to copy the populists? So for that, we need to look at the theory of populism that political science offers us. So Jan Werner Müller, in his famous book on populism, offers us a theory of populism. So what is populism? Well, populism is much more than just good communication or good rhetorics. In fact, populism is a fully fleshed out theory of values. The first one is that populism is fundamentally anti-pluralist. So what do we mean by that? By anti-pluralist, we mean that populists negate difference in society. For them, the whole society is one homogeneous whole. So here's an example. Viktor Orban thinks that Hungarian people are in essence the same, at least the Hungarian people he has in mind. They live according to traditional norms and habits and are very aware of their own history. And here you can already see that this anti-pluralist mindset goes against the fundamental values of liberalism, where we cherish diversity and think that the most important minority is the individual. In the end, for liberals, it always boils down to individual interests and values, and not to a collective identity of people that make it up on the top. Plus, there's a second anti-pluralist element in populism. They don't only deny heterogeneity on a social level, so differences on a social level, but also on an institutional level. While liberals cherish the power sharing between institutions, between the executive, legislative and judicative, the populists want to bring all of these institutions together under one, namely the popular will of the people. And that brings us to our second feature of populism. Populism is moralizing the so-called people. They put the people and the general popular will of the people in the center of politics. And while this might sound appealing, we have to look at the implications of this. Because if the only thing that matters in politics is the popular will of the so-called people, then all the achievements that liberals have hung high in the past, like the rule of law or human rights, go out of the window. What populists want is what liberals called the tyranny of the majority. Because whatever matters in politics for the populists is what the majority of the so-called people wants. And that means that minorities and judiciary processes go out of the window. So I'm not sure liberals should embrace that sort of understanding of democracy. And in fact, Viktor Orban himself called this form of governance illiberal democracy, in stark contrast to liberal ideas. And as you can see, all of these have a flavor of anti-establishment. And that's another core feature of populism, to be anti-establishment. But what they have in mind when they talk about establishment is very different from what you might have in mind. Liberals have always been skeptical of power structures and about so-called elites. However, when populists talk about the establishment, they don't only have the people in mainstream media in mind or the current political class. What they mean by establishment are the institutions, the courts, science, media in general. So when we want to side with the populists against the establishment, we should be very careful to see who we want to attack. Do we really want to undermine the rule of law, universities, or journalists? That doesn't seem like the liberal approach to dealing with political discourse. And if we look further, then we see how populists actually want to replace those structures in society. They want to replace the journalists, the judges, or the university professors with one particular figure, the leader figure, the savior that comes out of the populist camp. And this is another core feature of populism, the strong focus on the leader, savior, and father figure. It's kind of the return of kings to politics, where we replace party politics that liberals have endorsed, where parties represent certain ideologies and ideas, and return to the old form of politics, where there is one savior, one king, one mighty father figure in charge of the nation again. And you can see the difference here. Liberals have also embraced charismatic leaders, but for them, politics has at the forefront always been about values and ideas. That's not the case for populists. Populists put the person on the center stage, and the party and the ideas get irrelevant over time. And so we see populist parties fading out, being overshadowed by the father figure. And last, and maybe most importantly, populists want to transform the very nature of politics. They see politics as the existential battle between good and bad, between friend and enemy, and between us and them. They want to divide society. And again portrayed it with how liberals see society. For liberals, politics is all about cooperation. As John Rawls famously said it is a cooperative venture for mutual advantage. And it is not us versus them. It is not that we see society only in friends and enemies and that we want to battle it out with them. Politics is where we temporarily share power. So if you look at all of those features of populism, do we really want liberal populism? So instead of liberal populism, liberals need to think about how to become popular liberals. Of course, that is much more difficult than just copying the populists. But it will be the more successful road, because we won't end up with anti-liberal ideas.